And welcome to the CRM MVP podcast, episode number 40. As promised on the last episode, this episode will be focusing on 10 features I would like to see included or added to Dynamics 365. If you listen to our last episode, episode number 39, we focused on a list of 10 features that I think should be removed from Dynamics, or, if not removed, at least replaced by a better option, because the tools that we have or the features that we talked about on the list are really not cutting it anymore. They were perhaps features that were introduced a few years ago or a few versions ago, and they are no longer applicable to today's technology or today's requirements. So I would like to see them either gone completely or replaced by a better solution. But this episode will be 100% focused on 10 things I would like to add to Dynamics 365. Not now, just like the last episode, these features are not in any particular order. These are just a list of 10 things that I would like to see added, sort of like the first 10 things that came to my mind. I put this list together in about 5 minutes or so, or maybe less. I don't know. I just wrote down 10 things. And, just like the last episode, I feel that I could have done 40 features just to honor episode 40. 40 features that I would like to see added to Dynamics 365. So perhaps this will be a multiple, part series in which we're going to continue to add things. Perhaps I'll invite some other MVPs or some other people on the next episode or part 2 of the series about adding features or functionality into Dynamics 365. But for today, again, it's just me, and I will be talking about 10 things I would like to add to Dynamics 365 immediately. So, without any further ado, let's go with episode number 40. So, as I mentioned on, I think it was feature number 2 on the last episode, which was essentially getting rid of mail merge. I mentioned on that episode that for the number 1 on my list for this episode, I was going to make sort of my wish list of what a replacement for mail merge will look like. And, one of the things that I would like to see, obviously, is a single click print to Word and especially print to PDF. I think that instead of seeing a simple solution like what we have today, and I'm going to include the Excel templates and I'm going to include the Word templates on that as well, because, well, even though it's not a single click to it, it's, about 2 or 3 clicks, which is pretty good. It's a huge improvement, right? The fact that we can click twice or something and be able to export to a contract or a quote or something like that is a lot easier to use. So I give Microsoft and the product team, the Dynamics 365 product team, all the props for that. This is great, right? I tip my hat off. This is pretty good and a huge improvement, but we're still not all the way there, right? I mean, every time you work on an implementation, there's these requirements that keep coming up and up and up again. For example, how come we don't have the ability to configure a button that as soon as I hit print quote, for example, that it would generate a PDF and perhaps even give me the ability to email that as a PDF attached into an email, or perhaps even open my Outlook with the email and the customer and the PDF already attached and ready to go. Now, I do realize there's a little workaround about this. So if you use, for example, a Word template and you print the quote into Word, you can go to Word and into File and Share. There's an option there so you can email the attachment as a PDF. Now, that's not as seamless though. First of all, it takes about 5 or 6 or 7 clicks to get to this point, but you still have to go back and sort of dig in who your contact is or your customer is. Now, you might make the case that, well, you should already know who the contact is, and perhaps you should remember it within your Outlook and be able to type it in or whatever. And all of that sounds good, but again, that situation is, we're talking about, okay, you know who the contact is, you have emailed them before, you're doing it from a PC, so your Outlook opens up. Like, wouldn't it be easier if I had sort of a button in which I can just go ahead and click, or a checkbox or something that I can click on from my phone or anything, and just have that PDF automatically emailed to the customer or that contract? It doesn't have to be a quote. It could be a contract. It could be, a screenshot of a project a project calendar of items or whatever is coming up, right? A project plan. Could be anything, right? It would be amazing to be able to get to a point where we don't have the simplistic approach that we have today, because in a lot of cases, in real implementations, it goes beyond that. The requirements are more complicated. And I'm not talking about super complicated. I mean, just having the idea that I can click on a button and have a quote be emailed to the customer who selected on the opportunity or the quote already, and have that quote be attached as a PDF to them. I don't think that's a complicated request. That's a pretty standard request. And I would like to see that. I would like to see some kind of configurator, maybe some document configurator or something that allows us to configure the situations. And I totally realize that there are some companies out there that have solutions like this, and they thrive on obviously customers that have these requirements, so they can come in and implement a solution that would allow that. But one of the things that is inspirational, at least for me, is that as you go to conferences and you go to meetings, for example, I've seen some of the CEOs and the companies that are out there that have created solutions like this really pushing Microsoft to, essentially explain, why don't you have this? I feel that some of these organizations have fallen into this position because of a need they had, because they were working with customers over and over and over, and they sort of created the solution, and they saw that there was a gap in the market and they're selling it, but they don't necessarily want to be ISVs. And perhaps just selling a solution that generates PDFs and whatnot might not be enough to support you as a company. So you have a lot of people who might want to go back into being implementers and just focusing on implementing Dynamics and not really be an ISV. And even though they might be making a little bit of money by selling those solutions, they're sort of like, they are thinking more about the fact that this should be out of the box functionality. And I agree with them. That's why it's number one on my list. I think that we need something to replace mail merge. We need something to replace Excel and Word templates, to something that gives us a little bit more flexibility. So that is number one on the list. Moving on to number two. Number two is sort of a combination of requests, or combination of things that I believe should be added to Dynamics. And I'm going to call this one just performance-based configuration freedom, I guess. That would be a good name for it. And the reason for that is I think this encompasses all of those things that right now are limits in Dynamics 365 because they might affect performance. But I feel that we should be, well, first of all, let me just start by the fact that some of these limits have been in the product since forever. Like, when was the limit of 250 records per page as a limit introduced? I don't even remember. I think it was already 250 when I started working with it in 3.0, in CRM 3.0. Maybe it was 50 in 3.0, and then it got increased to 250 in CRM 4. Like, I don't remember. It was so long ago that I don't remember if that was always the limit, or maybe it increased a little bit later. I don't really remember. Anyone listening to this that actually remembers this stuff, feel free to let me know. I'll give you credit, of course, for this. But I don't remember when it was. It's been so long since we've had a limit of 250 records per page that I'm over it, right? So give me the opportunity to increase that, to increase it to 500, to 1,000, to whatever I want. Essentially, give us that configuration freedom that, we can then gauge if it's too slow or too fast, whatever it is. But again, that limit was introduced a long time ago. The fact that we can, and I mentioned this on the last episode, the fact that you can pin a view on the Outlook client and get all of the records sort of rendered in one page. Even if you have 50,000, they will be all shown in one page. You don't have to scroll from one page to the next every 250 records. I mean, it shows us that it's possible. It's possible to render more than 250 records. We know we can do that. We know we can show 1,000, 2,000, 20,000 in just one single page, because the Outlook client can do it, and the Outlook client pretty much uses the same functionality as the web client does. So why don't you allow me to have that freedom to increase the records per page, and I'll be the one determining if it affects my performance to a point where I need to dial it back. I will like that. And again, 250 records per page is just one example. When I talk about performance-based configuration freedom, I need to include other things, like for example, 6 objects on a dashboard, right? Since dashboards were included, we're only allowed to add 6 objects to it. But we know that we have technology that can do more than that. If you look at a Power BI dashboard, like, is there a limit on how many objects you can add to a Power BI dashboard? I've never hit it. I have no idea. I've seen dashboards with like 100 different things, including charts and numbers and all kinds of stuff, and they take a little bit to render, but they do render, right? So why don't we have the ability to create a dashboard with, I don't know, 10 objects, 12, 20, whatever? So I would like to see that increase as well. Some of the other limits we talked about on the last episode when it comes to fetch XML, for example, we have the fact that our views says you have 5,000 plus records because there's a limit on how many records are returned on the fetch XML before we get to see that result of 5,000 plus, the aggregation of 50,000 right records when it comes to aggregating and coming up with averages and sums and things like that, doing math operations. Some of those configurations or settings, I would call it, should be customizable. I would like to see that customizable. And I know that there's some of these settings that are performance based, essentially, that we can change with like the orgdb settings utility. And I talked about this utility on the last few 2-Minute Tuesday videos in our YouTube channel, CRM MVP Podcast YouTube channel. That utility allows us to modify some of these numbers, but not all of them, right? Not all of them are available. And I know that if I was on premise, I was able to modify that. I know it's unsupported. I know it's not recommended because of performance, but I am able to modify the 250 records per page and increase that. So I can do it on-prem because I have access to the database. I have access to the registry. I have access to things that I don't have access to when I'm on Dynamics 365 online, but I would like to have that freedom. So once again, performance-based configuration freedom is number 2 on the list. Moving on to number 3, man, this is one of those that I get always asked about whenever I'm training administrators or I'm training people who are functional consultants learning how to customize views and forms. How come we don't have a save and publish button? Save and publish is one of those things that everyone will love to have. When you're in a form and you finish editing a form, you always have to click save and then you have to click on publish. And a view is worse because the view, you don't even have a publish button. And there's not even a publish button when you're looking at the view on the regular client. You have to sort of click publish on the solution itself. So when you finish editing a view, you have to either save or save and close, and then you have to sort of hunt down the solution so you can publish the entity or publish all customizations. So it's a major pain. So it would be awesome to have a save and publish button. And I do realize that in some cases, like if you're working with workflows, for example, whenever you activate a workflow, it sort of saves it and publish it if you want to call it that way. Same thing happens to a business rule. So if you create a business rule, there's an activate button. If you click on activate, you're pretty much saving. You're also checking for errors or whatever. And then on top of that, you are activating it at the same time. So there are some cases where you do have that sort of experience of save and publish, but I would like to see that button added everywhere. On the form editor, on the view editor, just give us the ability to save and publish. The same thing with dashboards. So when you modify a system dashboard, you have to save and then you have to publish. So I would love to see a save and publish button on Dynamics 365. Hopefully, as we move more towards Power Apps and projects and things like that, we'll see more of that functionality coming up. But man, I would love to see a save and publish button. All right, number 4 is the ability to apply actions through business rules. So if you're creating business rules and you're creating actions, man, I would love to apply those actions to sections and tabs. That limitation that only allows me to apply actions. And by the way, actions, for those of you who are unfamiliar with this, are things like controlling visibility, controlling requirement, performing. And obviously, I understand some of these actions might not be applicable to sections and tabs, things like doing calculations and whatnot. But when it comes to, for example, visibility, like even if you just give me the visibility one, it would be awesome, because there's a lot of cases where you end up spending 30, 40, 50, 60 minutes creating a business rule because you have to hide 100 fields when another field equals whatever, right? Whatever condition you have. And that would be something that would take literally 30 seconds if I could just place all those fields on a section, for example, and then just hide the section. So as far as I understand, business rules are essentially based in JavaScript, unless, of course, you publish it with a scope of entity, in which case it really works like a plugin, not like JavaScript. But if you publish it and the scope is set to one form or all the forms on the entity, it will really work like JavaScript, to the point that if one of the fields that is referenced on the business rule is not on the form, the business rule won't work at all. So it really operates like JavaScript. And in JavaScript, I can apply actions to the sections and tabs. So it seems to me that the capabilities are there, but no one really has added the action that says sort of hide and show visibility at the field, at the section, or at the tab level. If you're not going to do the section, at least give me tabs, because I know I can always add a tab, put a section inside the tab, and then hide the tab. And the section obviously goes away too with it. So, I tweeted about this a couple weeks ago. I sort of shared the link to the idea on the idea page for Dynamics 365, and I encourage people to vote it up, because the more votes we have on that idea, the more likely it is for us to see it. I mean, I have to assume that the inability to apply business rules to sections and tabs are essentially adding thousands of hours worth of consulting time, functional consulting or customization time to projects all around the world. I mean, it has to be thousands and thousands of hours, because people are either writing JavaScript for it, which then has to be fixed later on at some point. It doesn't matter how good you are with it. It doesn't matter how much you stick to support it and SDK and all that stuff. It doesn't matter. It's been proven time and time again that every few versions, sort of the old SDK and the old supported stuff goes out the window, and we move into a better and more efficient sort of system and code. And all the code has to be updated. So you're either paying for it right now or you're paying for it later. If you're paying for it right now, it means that you're going to suck it up and create business rules for an hour to hide a bunch of fields that should take 30 seconds if we could just hide a section or a tab. Or you can take, a couple minutes by copying and pasting code from Google, or maybe you know how to write it, that hides the section or the tab. But then later on, when it's unsupported, a couple years later or whatever, you're going to have to rewrite that thing. So you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to put in the time. And I think that time, the thousands of hours every year that people spend doing that stuff, either now or later, can be eliminated by simply adding the capabilities of applying business rules actions to sections and tabs. And again, I am more curious or more interested about the visibility one rather than anything else, because some of them are not really applicable, obviously, to sections and tabs, right? Calculations and things like that are not applicable, but visibility, man, that will be huge help. I think I'm not alone when I say that this would, it would get one of those standing ovations. Like I remember when they introduced editable grids. Now we take it for granted. It's in there, right? But we didn't have it, and it was something that people were asking for years. And at some point, I don't remember what version it was, Microsoft announced it. And I remember they announced it along with a bunch of other really, really cool functionality. And when they mentioned that editable grids was coming, they got a standing ovation just on that one thing at the conference they announced it on. So it's something that a lot of people will be happy about, obviously. And me, I as I mentioned, I tweeted it a few weeks ago. And it was because it was frustrating, right? I was working on an implementation that required a ton of business rules to control visibility on the case form more specifically. So depending on the case type, we were going to ask for a bunch of questions or not and hide them and change, requirements and whatnot. So a manager wouldn't have to approve it unless we're providing a reimbursement. If it's a reimbursement, if it's over $1,000, and I want you to show this and require this field and add this step to the business process. So it was just very complicated visibility wise up and down the chain. So I would have loved having the capability to apply some of those business rules to sections and tabs. So once again, I think I'm beating a dead horse at this point. Number 4 is the ability to apply actions through business rules to sections and tabs. Number 5, again, this one is an old one, but it's one of those classic ones, which is giving us the ability to create party list fields, right? Party list field types. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the term party list, this is your typical set regarding field, right? Where you can select any record. And again, by that same token, I would rather, I don't necessarily just want the ability to create a party list field. Like I don't want another option on the data type. And recently, the last option that was added, the last option that was added was multi-select option sets, which is great. So high five to the team for doing that. But before that, the previous field type or data type that was added was customer, which allows us to pick either an account or a contact. I don't want party list to be added to that list. And again, they used to be called, or maybe they're still called, polymorphic relationships, right? Which are the ability to select any record in Dynamics. What I do want to see is sort of a multi-select lookup, if that makes any sense. I would like to pick all or none or 10 or whatever amount of entities that I look up to. So, just like we had option sets where you pick only one option, and now we have multi-select option sets. I would like to go from lookups, which is only one option, to multi-select lookups. So if we could get that, that would be awesome. So I get to pick, if I pick, every single entity to work like set regarding or a party list, then so be it. But maybe I don't want to pick every single entity. Maybe I want to give people an option of 10 different records they can select, or 3 different records they can select, or maybe just 2 different records they can select, but not be forced to account and contact. Maybe I want them to pick between 2 custom entities. Maybe one of the entities is a virtual entity and the other one is not. Whatever it is, just give me sort of the freedom to pick a multi-select lookup. And if it's called multi-select lookup, I'm going to claim, ownership of the idea, because I've never heard that before. I'm sure somebody came up with it before, but I like how it sounds. Multi-select lookups. Okay, number 6. And this one, again, a long time coming. I would love to have on the next version of Dynamics. I just don't think it's going to happen based on the track record on this functionality, but I'm just going to add it to the list, which is I would like for the team to finish audit. The audit functionality. I feel that auditing in Dynamics is it's amazing. So it's a great functionality. We absolutely need it. To the point that before audit was out, which was released in 2011, there were a lot of different custom solutions out there doing auditing. The problem with audit is, like I mentioned, it seems like the team started creating it once they got the audit part down. They sort of ran out of time and included it in CRM 2011 and didn't sort of finish it. Finishing it for me is giving us complete freedom to access the data captured in audit logs. I would like to, for example, be able to export the data, and if I'm going to have a meeting with with my users and talk about who's been creating the most records or modifying the most records or whatever, maybe this is a meeting about user adoption, I'm able to export the results from audit. Now I know some of you will say, but Gus, what about Organization Insights? Because Organization Insights has some of that information, but it's not as detailed, right? It's very high level when it comes to Organization Insights. You can't really drill in the way you can drill in into audit even today. If you go to the summary view, the audit summary view, which is essentially the global log for audit, you can filter all that stuff. You can filter by user, you can filter by activity, you can filter by record type, you can filter by day and time, you can filter by a bunch of different things. But that's as far as you get. We cannot export it to Excel. We cannot create a chart or a dashboard with this information. We cannot trigger any workflows or anything out of it. Which, again, I guess you can make the excuse that why would you want to trigger a workflow when an account is modified? Why do you want to trigger with the audit log when you can trigger when they modify the account? I guess I can see your point. But again, I would like to have the freedom to access that information. Like another thing, for example, in the information, the freedom also includes the freedom to destroy the information. The fact that when you're online, your audit logs are sort of controlled to every 3 months. So they'll last 3 months. They'll be capturing information for 3 months, which means that if you make a mistake, for example, let's say I don't know, for some reason you didn't follow best practice and you started tracking changes on the modified on or modified by fields, and this is an integration that runs every hour or something, and for some reason the integration is constantly updating a field in there, your audit log is going to be humongous, like gigs and gigs and gigs worth of audit logs, potentially worth of data that is stored on your CRM database. So when you're trying to access the database for legit CRM work, like saving accounts and phone calls and things like that, you are going to run out of space because you're capturing all these log files forever, right? So why not give us the option to go in there and delete the information, right? Just like we can do today, right? You can decide to capture, just like we can do today with system jobs. That's what I meant. You can decide to capture every single workflow you ever ran, successfully, unsuccessfully, failed, doesn't matter. You want to be able to capture all of those. But at any time you want, assuming that your instance is not collapsed, like I've seen some people that, trigger like 1 million workflows and then your storage goes up to like 13,000%, and I'm pointing the finger at me. I've done that before. But unless your instance is completely collapsed and you don't have access to it, you cannot access it to it because you broke the cloud. Again, me. You should be able to go and bulk delete all that stuff. Right? System jobs, whether they're completed or canceled or whatever, just create a bulk deletion job, pick whatever, record type you're trying to get rid of out of the system, and run your bulk deletion job, and boom, get rid of it. Why can I run a bulk deletion job on audit? Why couldn't I go into bulk delete and say, I want you to go to the audit entity, whatever. Go to the audit log entity, audit entries entity. I don't know what we would call it, but go into this entity and any event for the modified on the account entity, go ahead and wipe them out. That was my mistake. I have fixed the mistake. Go ahead and remove all of those because I don't care about changes on that field. And just boom, just reduce your audit log, within minutes. That would be awesome. So I would like to see, once again, for number 6 on the list, I would like the team to go and finish audit. Give us the ability to access it or improve it. Maybe finishing is the wrong word. I don't want to make it sound like, that's really what happened. Perhaps the requirements when audit was created was just we need a solution to track changes, and that's it. And that's what the team did, and they didn't really think about all these other potential uses for it. But now that we have all of these scenarios where we will love to have access to the log files, I think it should be enhanced. Let's just call it audit version 2. Audit version 2 giving us access to the data, and plus add reads. That would be awesome. If we could audit reads as well, that will give us the ability to use all that data. We know we can collect that information because Organization Insights shows reads. We can go to the Organization Insight solution, which is a free solution. All of you probably know about this. And we can see, give us reads by user, right? We can get a list of the users that are reading the most records. They're not changing anything. They're not creating things. Just reading records just to see who's really using Dynamics. And maybe we can split and see who's reading records through the mobile client versus the web client to see if the investment we've made in our mobile solutions are paying off, if people are really using that thing, right? Just version 2. Let's put it on the list. Audit version 2 will be awesome. Okay, moving on to number 7 on the list, and this episode might be shorter than the 10 things I would like to see removed, which is okay, right? Not every episode has to be over an hour, so I hope you enjoy the short episode. But number 7 is enhanced email client. I would like to see an enhanced email client. What do I mean by that? If you go and try to compose an email inside of Dynamics 365 to email it out, I mean, you guys have seen it. Like it's horrendous, right? I mean, it's not the most technically sound email composing solution out there, right? Can you even change colors on the font? I don't think so. Like I don't remember, but I maybe you can do that, and that's as far as it's gonna go. But you cannot really change a whole lot. You cannot really do much with the mail client that we have within Dynamics 365 out of the box. That thing has been in there for a long time. And one of the things that we thought about was, well, we're going to get an enhanced, mail client when, maybe we can borrow it or get it from Dynamics Marketing, right? And, the client sort of improved if you're using the Unify client. But at the same time, I look at a missed opportunity. I feel that a couple of versions ago, I think it was in Serum 2013, Microsoft came up with a solution that I still think it was brilliant, which is the ability to open in Excel online. The ability for me to take a view and open in Excel online, be able to make some changes and import those changes into the system. Now, later on, we realized that was Microsoft's, in part, it was Microsoft's answers to editable grids, right? People coming to us and saying, how come I have to open every record to make a change? Or how come I have to select a bunch of records and click on edit in bulk, but then I don't get to see any data? I sort of edit something and then hit save and it saves to everything. Why can't I just change it right on the grid like all these other CRM solutions allow me to do it, right? So I do think that in part, I don't know if this was a big part or a little part, but I think in part, the Open in Excel Online was an answer to that. I certainly train people that way. I certainly said, look, if you want to get to a position where you want to make a bunch of changes really quick, look, just click on this button, open in Excel Online, make the changes, save the changes, and that's it. Now, that included all the problems, which is if you open in Excel Online and it takes a while to save the changes, you could be potentially overwriting changes to someone else put in the system while you had your Excel Online open. I get that. It introduced certain challenges. And that's why I think the editable grids today are, way better, a way better way to do it. But one thing that I think is still a missed opportunity is the ability to use that open in Office Online in other tools, right? And we sort of do that with the OneNote integration. Although, when we go to OneNote, we click on it and we really open OneNote somewhere else. It's not embedded in Dynamics the way Excel Online was embedded inside essentially a grid or a view. I would love to see open in Outlook Online. I think that would be a great use of that deep app integration between Dynamics 365 and Office 365. Imagine if you're trying to put an email together in Dynamics and there was a button that says compose on Outlook Online or with Outlook Online. And then all of a sudden you get this amazing Outlook email composition client, essentially. You get this thing where you can attach files, you can do, all kinds of stuff just like you do when you're in Outlook. Because if you've used Outlook Online, this. It looks, straightforward like the Outlook client on the desktop. It's not exactly the same, but a lot of the functionality you have on the desktop is available online too. It works pretty much the same. So how awesome it would be if the email client within Dynamics 365 gave us the ability to compose with Outlook Online. That would be great. So I don't think you have to reinvent the wheel on this one. I don't think you necessarily have to bring in a whole new WYSIWYG editor or whatever from scratch. You don't have to develop it from scratch. I feel that we already have the answer, which is we have Outlook Online. Is there any way that we can embed that thing into Dynamics 365? And if you're connected via server-side sync, as soon as you send that email out, server-side sync can pick it up and track it inside of Dynamics. So it will look like if you send the email outside of Dynamics 365 or within Dynamics 365, it will be automatically tracked in the system. Now, again, I might be talking about complete nonsense. This might be technically impossible to be able to embed sort of Outlook or be able to have this button that somehow magically allows us to compose emails within Outlook Online. I might be talking like I don't even know what I'm saying, but I'm just dreaming here, right? This is the episode to dream. And when it comes to dreaming about what this solution can do, I feel that we have this amazing tool that allows us to exchange emails with our customers and with everybody else out there. Why don't we integrate with it? We already did it with Excel. Why don't we do it with Outlook? So that's number 7 on the list. Number 8. This one is an interesting one because, again, it comes up once in a while. It comes up on, I don't know, I would say 5 out of 10 deployments. And it's a common request, which is I'm going to just throw in 2 data field data types that are common. And I don't know if these are the reason why I didn't sort of bulk this together with the party list field type, because I could have just said give us more field types and add these 2 to the mix, is because I don't necessarily think these are actual field types. I think that this might be solutions within Dynamics or features within Dynamics more than a field type. But perhaps you see it, instead of a data type, you see it more as a maybe as a not as a data type, but as a field type, or maybe as a format. I don't know how to think about it. Like if I think about it like roll-up fields and calculated fields, can we also have a random number field? I mean, what would that be considered? Would that be considered a data type? Maybe. But I didn't want to put a label on this one. As long as we get the solution, I don't really care what you call this thing. You can call it custom entity. It doesn't matter to me. And perhaps you're going to have to end up creating a custom entity behind the scenes. I don't know how the solution would work, but there are 2 things I would like to see. I would like to see an auto number and a random number. Field types, data types. It could be a format added to the decimal number. I don't know how you're going to do it. I don't know if you want to add it down there within the field customization capabilities, right, where you have IME mode down there, and give me an option to a drop down so I can pick whether I want a standard field or auto number or random number, and show it only for number fields. It doesn't matter to me. I don't care how we call these things. That's why, again, I didn't want to bulk them with or put them together, group them with party list. But I will love to have an auto number, and I will love to have a random number field inside of Dynamics 365. So for auto number, super straightforward. I have a custom entity that is about warranties. For example, when you buy a product from me, you go and register your warranty, and that creates a warranty record inside of Dynamics. Just an auto number. Every time a warranty is created, next number is given to that warranty. Sort of how it looks in cases and quotes and invoices and some other records today in Dynamics 365. And speaking of those records, by the way, you can build upon that. If you want to just take the auto number functionality that we already have in Dynamics and make it better, I'll take that. Right? Give us the ability to add custom entities to it. Give us the ability to remove the gibberish out of the auto numbering, because right now it adds like at least 3 letters before the actual number, then the number comes in, and then at least 4 to 6 or 8 or something like that characters after that. So it's a lot of gibberish. Like, what if I just want numbers and I can just say I want 3-digit numbers or 4-digit numbers? So you end up with warranty number 0025 or whatever it is, if you're the 25th product being registered through our system. So I would love to see an auto numbering solution, and at the same time I would like to see a random number solution. So random number solution could be, again, in the same case of warranty, maybe I don't want to count up as a regular auto number, but maybe I just want to assign some random numbers and serial numbers, right? Just randomize a bunch of information and give it to me. You can put how many characters you want. You can put whether you want to stick to just numbers or whether you want to use letters and numbers. And, just again, maybe this is an enhanced auto number functionality. Just take that and make it better. The auto number functionality has been in Dynamics since forever. And it's never been changed. I don't remember any time where Microsoft actually changed anything on it. It works great, I mean, for what it does, which is generate a unique number, and that's it. But it's not flexible, right? I mean, like I said, the only thing you can change is the first three letters before the number, and then, reduce a couple of characters that go after the number is being generated. But I would like to see a little more flexibility on that. All right, number 9, synchronization of security, or authorization, if you want to call it, between SharePoint and Dynamics 365. I would love to see that. And I know there are companies out there that have solutions that do this. But right now, SharePoint and Dynamics are sort of integrated, but not really married together. And what that means is that if you have a user that doesn't have access to records in Dynamics 365, doesn't mean that user doesn't have access to the documents connected to those records in SharePoint. You could have a user that can see all the quotes, all the contracts, all the documentation for a customer. Like, imagine if you're working for a company that it's very secretive. Like, I've done a couple of implementations for finance organizations where, I'll give you one, for example. There's a project that I did for an investment capital company. And what they did with Dynamics is that whenever they got interested in a company, let's say they want to buy whatever, Elevate Solutions, my company, right? They would create an opportunity called Elevate Solutions. And then only a couple of people, right? Like 1 or 2 people would know about this, and they would approach Elevate and they would say, "Are you guys interested on this?" Right? And those are leads essentially, and or move from a prospect into an opportunity once the answer is yes. And then they start asking for paperwork, and they start asking for, you just give me your AR information and your account receivable, your accounts payable, and give me some contracts and give me this and give me that. And they start asking for all this information as they determine, whether it makes sense to, try to buy this company, right? Again, they were using Dynamics for this. But it was super, super secret because some of the organizations they bought were publicly traded, or some of the organizations they bought, if the word got out that they were trying to buy it, someone else could come in and make a bigger offer and sort of snatch it. I mean, we saw it with like LinkedIn, for example. As soon as, there was some rumors that maybe Microsoft or Salesforce want to buy LinkedIn, boom, right? The war started to see who would outbid the other one. So, obviously for this company, and they didn't buy companies like LinkedIn, like multi-billion-dollar organizations, but they definitely wanted to keep things on the down low when it came to negotiations to, take over a business. So because of that, there was a lot of paperwork involved, a lot of paperwork involved in contracts and things and lawyers and whatnot. All of that information was stored on SharePoint. So imagine if security was sort of slacked off, if we really focused on the security in Dynamics 365 and making sure that no one can see the opportunities unless they're involved with them somehow. And we use access teams for that, and they work great. But people could go to SharePoint and access the documents if the security in SharePoint wasn't tight the way it was in Dynamics 365, right? So the idea is there should be a setting or something, a field, I don't know, maybe on the system settings or the document management section, when you set up your SharePoint site via server-based integration, there should be something where I say synchronized security or authorization matching or something like that, right? You can name it anything. I like authorization matching now that I think about it. But the point is, if you cannot see the record in Dynamics, you cannot see the documents for that record in SharePoint. It doesn't matter what your security is. There's a complete synchronization in here. Now, you could say that you could override it somehow, that if you're an administrator on SharePoint, you should be able to see all documents or whatever it is. I'm not really sure how I would handle that. I'm not really sure if I would say no, like the authorization matching setting overrides, whatever permissions you have on SharePoint. Probably not. Just understanding Microsoft and understanding the way they approach security and authorization, which is a implicit denial approach to it rather than an explicit denial that NTFS permissions uses, for example. I think that perhaps if you have a lot more permissions, then it might not work. I think that the requirements will be, okay, you have to have bare minimum permissions in SharePoint, and then if you have access to those records in Dynamics, we'll give you access on SharePoint. But as soon as you lose access to a record in Dynamics, we take away access on SharePoint, something like that. But I would love to see that. I would love to see a setting where if you cannot see the records in Dynamics, like the accounts or the opportunities or whatever, you're integrating with SharePoint, that your security would be synchronized and won't show it. You go to SharePoint, you don't even see the folder, right? It's invisible to you. If the record is invisible in Dynamics, the documents are invisible in SharePoint and the folders are invisible too. That would be an awesome feature. I would like to see that. I understand there's some technical challenges with this, but there are companies that already figure it out, right? I think there's a company out there called Connected Solutions or something like that has potentially the most popular. I've deployed it a few times, but I don't remember the name right now. And they have, again, a solution that does that would synchronize security between Dynamics and SharePoint. So maybe you don't have to create it from scratch. Maybe you can just acquire those capabilities. And when I mentioned, by the way, features to add to Dynamics, I'm 100% on board with Microsoft acquiring a company that brings those features, right? One example was, the whole audit log capability, or maybe the email client, or whatever it is. Maybe there's a company out there that already figure out a way to giving you the ability to compose with Outlook Online. Just take them, right? And include it in Dynamics 365 for us to use. All right, and then finally, on the list of my features to add to Dynamics 365 is, man, I would love to have the ability to customize the social pane. The social pane, was introduced in Dynamics CRM 2011 update rollup 12, I believe, when the new client came up and the new forms were introduced, and we had our first glimpse of the social pane. And it changed again for 2013. And obviously, if you look at the social pane today on the unified client, it looks great. It's been improved tremendously. A lot of feedback has been considered essentially for the social pane on the unified client, on the unified interface. I think it looks great. So, again, hats off to the team for doing a great job there. But I would love to be able to edit that. I would love to have full flexibility on it, to be able to select which records are shown, which ones are not shown, what order I want to show them. I want to be able to decide whether activities that I put into the social pane are closed as completed or not. I want to be able to add or remove checkboxes or buttons however I want. So for example, right now when I'm saving a phone call, I have a checkbox that says left a voicemail, and that's pretty much it. What if I don't want to give people the ability to leave voicemails? What if I want to add a field that says, create a follow-up call, and there's a little, date and time field in there, and you can just say, I want to create a follow-up call for this day, and then a workflow kicks in and creates the phone call for the user, right? The follow-up call connected to that particular opportunity or whatever they're saving that phone call in. I want to be able to edit the social pane however I see fit. I want to remove tabs. I want to reorganize the tabs, put this one first or second or whatever. And again, I realize that the unified interface doesn't work with tabs. It's not the same thing, but whatever it is, even the next version that we don't even know how it's going to look, social pane should be completely customizable. Right now, it's just this blob, this box that sits right there on the form, and there's really nothing you can do other than picking what's your default tab, which doesn't work all the time. So, having the ability to customize it completely would be great. So, once again, number 10 on the list is a customizable social pane. So, like I mentioned, this list is not my top 10 things that I would like to add to Dynamics. I can keep going on and on and on with this. Actually, I'm going to give you one more. Let's just do one more, a bonus feature that I think should be added to Dynamics. And this is another one of those that I think Microsoft should just go ahead and buy instead of having to create from scratch. However, I will say that the efforts they've put on this particular topic have been amazing, right, over the last couple of years, and that is the data migration and integration area. Now, I've been a big supporter of Microsoft really investing on this, for their next acquisition, and that's when Microsoft was sort of acquiring everybody, right? They acquired Marketing Pilot, they acquired Field One, they acquired NetBreeze, which became Social Engagement. They acquired Mojo Surveys, which became Voice of the Customer. They were just acquiring companies left and right, and there I'm sitting like, well, when are they gonna acquire a company that does data migrations and integrations? There's a ton of them, right? Scribe, Kingsway Soft, Cozy Rock, E1 Solutions. I mean, there's many companies out there doing this thing. All of them look successful to me. They have customers. They do their job right. Instead of having to reinvent that thing, Microsoft could have gone and acquire one of those companies. And I do believe that perhaps we will witness some consolidation on that arena because there's a lot of different options, and perhaps that will happen. It's what happened with mobile clients, for example. We had 3, 4 different options, and as Microsoft got better, some of those companies started consolidating right into one. But for now, what we have is we have obviously the data connectors and integrators that are created for the Power Platform, meaning Power Apps, Microsoft Flow, etc. Right? We have all of those options in there. The fact that we can connect to multiple technologies and decide what to do with them. Obviously, still not optimal because there's some limitations with those, especially when it comes to how many times a day or how many records are you going to run a flow for, right? Do you have the right amount of limitation in Microsoft Flow and your licensing to be able to make sure that all your data is synchronized? How much data do you have? So can we have a solution like any of the ones that we have today in the market for Dynamics 365? Again, this one is a bonus on the list, but it's one of those things that I think most people will love. It's to see a solution that allows us to create data migrations and integrations, or allow us to migrate data. I talked about it on the last episode when I said that Microsoft should get rid of the data import wizard, or the import data wizard rather, but not just get rid of it and that's it, turn it off and forget it. It's about changing it. It's about switching it for something better, something that gives us the capabilities that a lot of these tools give us today. I would definitely love to see that again in a perfect world. Not only we would have the ability to do data imports and data integration, but perhaps some data augmentation at the same time. Perhaps data validation, like validation of addresses and things like that. I think the sky is the limit when it comes to data integrations and data migrations. But the fact that we don't really have a go-to solution in Dynamics 365, and we have to rely sort of on third parties, which there's nothing wrong with that. Again, I'm really good friends with the people who lead these amazing companies, and obviously I love their solutions. I use them on my implementations, but I feel that this is one of those areas that Microsoft can definitely make a big impact by giving us the solution already out of the box and ready to go. Just sort of, just like they did with ADX Studio. There were multiple solutions out there for portals and whatnot. This is one of those things that would enhance the solution, and they went out and acquired ADX Studio, at least the portals at area of it, and now we have portals in Dynamics, right? We can go to those and take advantage of them. I think that doing that same kind of strategic investment on one of these solutions that are out there, would be great for the community and would be great for customers of Dynamics 365. So, again, those are my 2 cents. So there you have it. My 10 things that I would like to add to Dynamics 365. On the last episode, I'm not really sure how to take this, but typically, well, maybe I was getting used to it by the other episodes that were released before, but I got a ton of feedback from the managed versus unmanaged, or the things that I never do in Dynamics, or whatever it is. The last few episodes I've gathered a lot of feedback, positive, negative. It doesn't matter to me. I learn from everybody. If everybody agree with me, then there will be nothing for me to learn, and I want to learn more than be right. I want to learn. So I didn't get a whole lot of feedback from the 10 features I would remove from Dynamics. So I don't know how to take that. I don't know if I think that everyone agrees with my list, that everybody wants those things gone, and there's no point on just telling me I agree with it. Okay, that would be cool. Or does everybody disagree with my list, where they think I'm completely way off, so they don't want to even waste time because we're so in complete polar opposites? Or I'm not really sure how to take it, because I know you guys are listening, because I can see the numbers on how many people listen to it, and people are downloading the episode and tuning in for sure, but it's not gathering a whole lot of feedback. So I'm not really sure what to do about that. I would love to hear some feedback again, because it really pushes us to create perhaps even future episodes to talk about even more features to remove or more features to add. So let me know what you think if you listen to it. But because again, it went very quiet. We'll see how this one goes. Again, the 10 things I added to the list are not my top 10. These are just 10 things on the list. So I'm curious to see what you think. What else? What would make your top 10? That will be interesting to see. I think that for future episodes, at least the ones coming up, since I've recorded a few, I guess, back-to-back episodes. Well, I guess 2 episodes back-to-back solo episodes. Probably the next one will be an interview. I'm not going to spoil it yet, but it could be an interview coming up for episode 41. But until then, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you're not already following us on Twitter, we are at CRM MVP Podcast. If you're already not subscribed to our YouTube channel, again, our YouTube channel is not these long episodes like the ones that you're seeing right now. We mainly post super short videos. We have a series called 2 Minute Tuesday. I encourage you to subscribe and to hit that alert button so you're the first one to know. Got a lot of feedback actually on the last couple of episodes of 2 Minute Tuesday, so please support us there and like our videos. And then if you want to go back, if you're new to the podcast, I know a lot of people, especially during the CRMUG Summit, didn't know the podcast was out there. If you're new to the podcast and want to go back and listen to the old episodes, all of them are listed on our website, crmmvppodcast.com. If you have any questions, any comments, any recommendations for future episodes, you can email us, info@crmmvppodcast, or you can tweet us, right? Just let us know what you think. But until the next one, episode number 41, we'll see you. Thank you again for tuning in. See you in 2 weeks.